Welcome back to Make It Mental, everybody. This is my very crude representation of the sun and the earth, although definitely not to scale. The point is, or color combination or geographical correctness. So this is just very, very crude. It took me probably 30 seconds to make this. This represents the most direct line, the shortest line to Earth from the sun, right? And this is a theoretical equator. What they don't explain to you in climate change models, I want to explain to you in very, very basic, crude form, so that way more people can understand. And the news media, a lot of them, I believe, are corrupt, and some of them just don't give enough knowledge. There is information out there if you search for it, and you may have learned some of this in science class. So, the Earth, basically, they like to teach you that the Earth rotates in a nice circle, like you see here. This is being a theoretical equator. Antarctica, the North Pole, it just rotates on a nice circle. So this is going to be the place where you're going to get the most heat because it's the shortest distance between the sun and here. Whereas obviously the North Pole is going to get very little heat. It takes longer for the sun's light to get up here and longer to get down here to Antarctica. But what they don't tell you is that the Earth, you may have forgotten this, you probably learned it in school, at least in junior high school or high school, depending on how far your education goes. But the Earth also wobbles, right? Or has a tilt, right? So now the North Pole is going to get more sunlight. Antarctica is going to get less sunlight. It's going to be colder here. It's going to be warmer here. It's going to melt here. It's going to freeze here. And you're going to go through more changes in extreme temperatures anywhere along this theoretical line where the Earth is now rotating. The other thing they don't tell you is that the Earth does not rotate on a nice, perfect plane, right? They like to show you nice, perfect models where the Earth is constantly nice and flat, traveling around the sun in a nice, flat pattern, but it doesn't do that. It actually goes in an elliptical, this may be extreme, but it goes in an elliptical pattern, right? Maybe not that extreme, but it goes in an elliptical pattern. So here, you're going to reach the higher temperatures, and here you're going to get colder. And then also the Earth tilts, and it wobbles, and it spins round and round and round. So it's doing all these things all the time. And they like to blame climate change on CO2, which is false. CO2 is a necessary gas for photosynthesis for plants to create oxygen for animals and us to consume, so that way we may be able to breathe. If CO2 was not available, plants would not photosynthesis, create oxygen. We would die of asphyxiation and or starvation, whichever come first, I don't know. It's a chicken or the egg question. So I hope this helps you out in making a better judgment in the future of what's actually going on. Always do research. Don't trust what you see at the first glance, right? Always do the research. You probably learned this shit in school like I did, right? The Earth was once frozen. They believe the Earth was once frozen, or at least a majority of it. Some people say it was frozen pole to pole all the way around, and somehow it warmed up and thawed out. I don't know. But there is a very good indication that the Earth, or the majority of the Earth, was frozen at one point in time. That was probably when the Earth was way far out here, right? And maybe it was spinning on a different orbit. And you can tell that the Earth has spun on different axes if you look at Google Maps, or not Google Maps, Google Earth, and you can see small cracks in the Earth where the Earth might have spun on a different axis. Because when the Earth is spinning round and round and round and round, it's going to be larger at its equator, which means the center point. it's going to be larger here. So you're going to see some cracks. They may not be perfect, but for the most part, they're going to be fairly symmetrical from one spot to another, a fairly straight line. And the weak spots are going to obviously break off and go a different direction, but for the most part, it's going to be a fairly straight line. And if the Earth was slightly tilted from a polar shift, you're going to have a new equator line, which may crisscross or it may go an entirely different direction. Climate change is absolutely necessary for the things to be. I would highly suggest always research information, find out the facts. Don't limit yourself to one particular news outlet, whatever that may be, whether it's a science journal, some sort of nature journal, nature science, whatever that may be, CNN, NBC, some guy talking, maybe me, right? Maybe me. Don't believe me. Go search it out. Find the facts. And more specifically, let me sidetrack a little bit here. If the government is looking for information and they want a specific information, well, if you pay me enough money, I will manipulate the information to show what you want. Right? I need this little side project right here. I want to work on this side project. You pay me enough money, and I will show you the results that you want. Right? You pay me the money, I will show you the results that you want, and we can confuse many, many people. Again, CO2 is necessary for things to be. The climate will change. It will always change. It is necessary for the things to be. If you remove every man, woman, and child from the face of the planet today, the climate will change, right? Because the planet is not always on a nice flat plane. It's in an elliptical orbit, and it may not always be flat. It may be up, it may be down, and depending on where it is in its relationship to the sun, it's going to affect climate change. Right? You go outside on a cold morning, it's fucking cold. What do? You turn your back to the sun to warm up, right? You feel the heat of the sun that warms you up. Right? The sun is necessary. CO2 is necessary. Climate change is necessary. Hell, the fucking climate changed 5 times yesterday. There's no denying climate change. Right? The problem is, when they used to say global warming was a problem. Then they figured out that global warming wasn't catching on because the globe actually wasn't warming, right? If you do some searches, very simple searches, search sunken cities, right? The climate has been changing long before the Industrial Revolution. There are cities 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet below the ocean. Long before the Industrial Revolution, before we started allegedly producing carbon into the atmosphere, right? They have found fossilized trees, plant life, and I believe some animal life in Antarctica, right? So that tells me that the Earth might have rotated on a slightly different axis, right? They don't want to tell you these things outright, but always search out your information. Find the facts. Get them from as many different sources as you can. Piece them together to make the best outcome. Have a good day.